Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm certified natural healthcare practitioner Erin Thole, and today I am super excited because we are going to be chatting with Nate from NBX Wellness and learning more about genetic testing, what it is, why it's a good idea to do it. It's really a super proactive thing to do for your health and for your kids' health too. I had both my kids tested when they were about 6 months old, just to kind of know what could potentially be coming down the pipe. And it was actually super helpful for my son for getting him an early diagnosis of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So that has been like monumentally important for him and his health. Just knowing that early, because most people aren't diagnosed with that until they're like in their 40s or older. So that's just kind of my little story about why genetic testing has been so important. So I just kind of want to turn it over to Nate and let him introduce himself, talk a little bit about what NBX Wellness is, what they do, the genetic testing, all of that good stuff. So thanks for being with us today, Nate.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here. Like I said, thanks for the invitation. But yeah, my name's Nate, and I am an account manager with NBX Wellness. So really, that means I get to basically work with people like yourself, but I get to do a lot of working on difficult genetic cases, especially. Like I have people reach out to me asking me, okay, I have this specific scenario, I have this genetic makeup for this patient or this and what is going to be best for that person. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. I get to be involved in all sides of kind of the journey and the offer that we have as a company. So it's really awesome for me. From my personal experience, I'll say so I have my undergraduate degree in nutrition. I went to medical school and kind of had some experiences there where I just realized it wasn't the right thing for me and my family. So
Yeah.
we moved on. And honestly, I mean, nutrition is my first love. I love, being active, fitness, those things like that. And so the supplement space is always something that I really wanted to be involved in. But I'll say when this opportunity came to me, it was one of those things when I was in school, even in my undergrad, we always talked about, oh, can't you just imagine one day we're going to be using genetics to like say, okay, this is the treatments we're going to be giving people. These are the products, the pharmaceuticals, whatever that we're going to be prescribing. And so when I had this opportunity, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like what I imagined would be 10, 15, 20 years down the road for myself and for patients alike to take advantage of, and it's here now. And so for me, obviously really excited. And then my own personal experience, I've always been a pretty healthy guy. And when I got my genetic test back, I had all of these mutations. And I was like, oh no, I'm broken. I think we all kind of have that experience, right? You're kind of like, oh my gosh, like I thought
Am I dying? Yeah.
yeah, am I dying? Like I'll never be healthy again. Um, and I think it speaks to a few things. One, that correct nutrition and lifestyle choices do make a difference
Oh, yeah.
with these mutations. But I'll say, obviously, I wanted to kind of have my own experience with our products. Um, the nutraceuticals, we call them, they're supplements, but it's kind of a class. And so I wanted to have an experience with them and see what they would do for me. And honestly, it's gone, I feel like, from me from being healthy to really what we talk about when we talk about wellness, right? It's just another level. And a noticeably difference with my wife, with my kids. And it's just mostly been just, I feel like, my overall quality of life, my energy, my mental state has just been better. And it really is, to what you're saying. I mean, as much as we can look at, yeah, you may see some chronic conditions like, oh, I'd never realized that I had this, or that I was susceptible to these things, or that, yeah, this is something I need to address now. It can really also, I think, for whether that's going to be you and that you'll find that, or it's just your quality of life that just you go from good to better to, hopefully best at some point, right? Um,
Sure.
that's kind of the benefits there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they get their genetic testing done, have kind of like these aha moments where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm like, I have, because we all have genetic mutation or, SNPs as we call them, where, because you get one good you get a donation from each parent. And so you could have a good gene and a bad gene, or two good genes, or a bad one and a bad one. So we want to know, where you are with each of those genes. And if you're what we call heterozygous, which is one bad, one good, or homozygous, which is either, two the same, could be two good or two bad.
Yeah.
So it can be super helpful for people, kind of learning like, oh, that's why it's really hard for me to recover from surgery, or that's why, I have a really hard time like balancing my neurotransmitters and kind of lean towards depression or anxiety, or, things like
Yeah.
that. You're not a slave to your genetics. Like, so many people are like, oh, this runs in my family, that runs in my family, but that really only accounts for about like 10% of your overall health, right? So everything else is environmental: what you put in, what you don't put in, your stress level, your lifestyle, like all those things. So we can manipulate genes to express themselves in like a better way, basically, like support, give it a crutch, like support it as you're going through life.
Right.
And just be proactive, so you don't have to be like, oh shoot, I'm just going to be depressed forever. It's like, no, let's do something about it so that
Yeah.
you don't have to deal with that. So do you want to speak to that a little bit more, like when you're looking at someone's panel and seeing like the heterozygous versus the homozygous, and like recommendations that you make and different things that you see with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, it's good that we jump in a little bit to the background of this. And I probably should have covered that too.
No,
But
let's.
yeah, I think that sometimes when we hear genetics, and yeah, I think you alluded to this, that really we've heard people in society, kind of the popular culture of like, oh, it's just my genetics. It's just runs in my family. I'm just, I'm just in trouble for the rest of my life. I'm just going to have these issues. And the reality is as science has progressed, especially the genetic science, we've realized and some people may have heard this term of epigenetics,
Yes.
right? And that's really what you're talking about, is the expression of these genes where, I may have these, like you said, there's the homozygous mutations where, well, and I'll back up and explain this maybe in a little bit of more of what you said too, is that if I have a gene that's going to produce a protein that ultimately has a function in the body, that gene, if it's normal, it's going to produce that protein so that a system like, producing energy in the mitochondria, for example. I think we all remember mitochondria and the powerhouse of the cell, right? We all
Everybody
remember
knows that. Yeah.
that. So that's always my go-to. I'm like, everyone knows what I'm talking about. We talk about
Yeah.
mitochondria. But we go from there, we're making these proteins so that our mitochondria are working well. And if I have the two that are just, normal, we call those the wild type, right? Because that's what's going to be in the wild, right? And it's going to be functioning correctly. Now, let's say I have one mutation, and you already alluded to this, we call those heterozygous. So I may not be working as effectively. I might not be making that protein from my DNA as effectively. But I may be doing it at an okay rate. And then, yeah, if we have a double mutation, then there's obviously, a great issue. And there's a good chance that I might be having, a lot of issues. And that's where we come into, okay, am I like, do I run out of energy quickly? Am I needing to take an extra caffeine? And the reality is a lot of, and what, to speak to your question, when I see people's genetics, I'm at the point now where I can ask, hey, do you tend to have trouble sleeping at night?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, actually. And I'll say, I mean, how long has that been going on? Like, I always have since I was a kid. And then you can say, I ask those questions preemptively and then say, I would have thought that looking at your genetics. And so you kind of see, based on people's genetics and just a little bit of experience, that, wow, these are really, really telling as far as the symptomology that people are having. And then, yeah, like you said, we can address this when it comes to either, the correct products with active ingredients that are actually pure, and lifestyle choices, of course. And that those things can affect how those genes are being expressed, right? The epigenetics. So even though, let's say I have even a homozygous mutation, oftentimes those mutations aren't 100% effective or affecting the pathway that they are working in,
Mhm.
right? And so, and part of that is because and part of why I think our test is beneficial is because some in the past, especially, you would see tests that would say, okay, this gene means you're going to have a problem with this, and this gene means you're going to have a problem with this. And in reality, there are a few genes that are that way. We call it that whole 1-to-1, right? One gene, one symptom. There's very few genes that are that way. And in reality, we look at a group of genes and can say, okay, based on all of these genes that apply to inflammation or neurotransmitters or detoxification, based on this group of genes that all play a role by producing a protein that has a part in this pathway, when you look at all of them as a whole, we can say, okay, you are going to have an issue with this specific pathway that may lead to the symptom. So, and that's why I say, even though you may have like a mutation, let's say the other 11 genes that we know of that produce proteins that play a role in these pathways, let's say those are not mutated, then you likely are going to be doing fine. And especially, like I said, if you're making the right adjustments, then the way that these genes can code, the way that they can produce these proteins can be much more effective. And, you can, be at that, like we've talked about, right? That greater capacity for wellness. So that's kind of something that I've seen and been kind of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it gives people some of their power back when it comes to their health as well, where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I do have a say in this. Like if I choose to
Yeah.
actually do something about it, like I can make some changes here. And a lot of the products are really monumental in just helping to support those proper gene expressions.
Mhm.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the products that you guys use and like some of the different implications, like the most popular, like I think a lot of people now know about MTHFR gene mutation.
Yeah.
That seems to be like the most popular one that's kind of blowing up right now, where, everyone's like, oh my gosh, do I have this mutation?
Yeah.
There's these things that are associated with it. And it does make a lot of sense when if you have that mutation, into what degree and stuff like that. But do you want to talk about some of the products that you most commonly use, why you use them, how they help, all of that good
Yes. Yeah.
stuff?
Yep. So I'm glad you brought up MTHFR. That is for me one of the pathways that I'm the most passionate about, and really kind of how neurobiologics, which now has rebranded to NBX Wellness, which is where we're at now, how we were started with Dr. Kendall Stewart. He's a founder and formulator, and he's still with us as our lead formulator and medical advisor. But that's really where we started, and the reason why our products, what sets them apart and what got me excited as I was, looking at this opportunity and looking at the products, to be honest, ethics and honesty is really important to me.
Yeah.
And so when I look at the products, I'm a big nerd when it comes to not only the science and health, but you know, I like supplements for that reason, because you look
Yeah.
at, okay, what is the chemistry of this? Is this actually is this a product that I actually need based on the science and the chemical structure, all the nerdy stuff, right? That's what I
Yeah,
love.
I'm right there with you. I'm
Yeah.
totally a nerd about all this stuff too. Like
Yeah.
I get
And
it.
that's probably what drew you to our brand, and honestly what made me feel like, yeah, this is actually something I really want to do. Because what Dr. Stewart has done is essentially taken products that, for one, they correlate with genetics, so he's created them specifically for his patients. And I should back up and say that he's a ENT neurotologist by trade, and kind of got into this space almost on accident, doing a fellowship research on base of the skull surgery and infections there. And so that's kind of how he got into the space and realized, what, there are lots of things outside of just physical impairments to the nervous system, but like when we talk about infections, inflammation, and so anyways, that's a little bit of background there. But all of that is to say that these products are really created by him, as that I call like kitchen sink products, because he's going to say, okay, when I look at what potential genetic patterns are, different mutation patterns that are common in people, I'm going to make this product that has these ingredients.
Yeah.
And they're more than just, like, if we're talking about MTHFR, right? It's more than just folate, right? I think at least I hope, and I'm sure
I
your
would hope
patients
so. Yeah.
I'm sure your patients would see that, or would have been familiar with folate, right? We know for a long time, especially when it comes to pregnant women, right, that folate is very important. But over time, we've realized how important folate is. I mean, it has probably, I mean, I could underestimate saying that it has probably over 150 different effects in the body, but the most important of those being with our, our nervous system, making serotonin and dopamine, and also when we talk about working with reactive oxygenative species, which is ultimately what leads to, cancer and things like that.
Yep.
Um, that it is so important. And so that, to be honest, when I looked at our product line, I went to this methylation complete is one of our most popular products. I went to that first because I thought, I know how important folate is. I want to see what these guys are about, because I know that you can't just say here's folic acid, right? And so you look at the products and you see, okay, you've got folate, you've got B12 and B6 is essentially what you've got in the products. But what's with all of these like chemical names after it? It's like this, methyl folate, and then I'm trying to remember the B6 is like I'm trying to remember the exact name, but it's like a bis fire, all these crazy
Yeah,
names
yeah, exactly.
that take me back to like OChem and biochem,
They're
and I
like,
just get
yeah, they're
scared.
all this long. Yeah.
Yeah, and you wonder why. You're like, what is this? This is
What is
some
it?
weird chemical thing that they made in a lab. And the reason why we've done those, for one, I'll say too, is that they are extracts from food.
Yep.
But those are the active form of folate, the active form of vitamin B6, the active form of vitamin B12. And the reason why that's important is because if you have genetic mutations that are saying, okay, I've got this genetic mutation for this protein, but then you have complicated processes in the body where you've got, so let's say we're 5 steps into this process to make dopamine, and right in the middle is where your mutation, your homozygous double mutation is. So you've got an issue making this. So you're able to do this, but you can't get past this point and make dopamine correctly, which ultimately is going to lead to mood, right? Focus, all those kinds of issues. And so when we look at your genetics, we say, okay, you've got this problem. And then, then we created products that said, okay, we're going to give you this product here, right? Or I should say the byproduct of this process. So
Yep.
your body's going to come here and you may still have this issue, but we're going to give you this activated version of folate. And so now you'll be able to finish that process because everything else is working fine. So you finish
I
that
love it.
process and you move right along. And that's, to me, like, I the more I look at products, because we have a lot of products, and to be honest, I'm still educating myself, and I'm always so happy and pleasantly surprised to be like, wow, these are covering all my bases. They really are using the right chemical versions that the body's going to use, and it's actually going to help me with my specific genetic mutations. So that's my nerding out on
Yeah.
the
And
products.
I can tell that you're like so happy about it. Like you have so much passion
Yeah,
about it. And that's awesome because I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, yes, yes, I know. That's awesome. Like that's exactly how I feel. But like it just
yeah,
completes that circle. Like if you can't make the
mhm,
full circle, you're stuck. Like you can't, your body
yeah,
can't do what it's supposed to do. So it really just helps you to complete that full circle. And I'd been using the products in my practice for years. And then when my son was diagnosed with SIRS, with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and I was going to his pediatrician and we're doing all this additional testing and blah blah blah. And then she, whips out all of the neurobiologic stuff. And I'm like, I have an account with it. Like it was just like really confirming to me that like a medical
yeah,
doctor, like as a naturopath, um, sometimes there's like these things where you're like, okay, well, if this medical doctor who everyone, just society kind of sees as like they're the holy grail kind of thing, if
mhm,
she's doing the same thing I'm doing, then this is good. We're going to get along
right,
great, all that stuff. So it was like a confirmation to me, like, this is a good company. If she, who, I know as a practitioner, is really, really diligent about making sure that whatever she's recommending to her patients is top drawer. I was like, all right, we're in the same boat. This is good. This is good,
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, and now I know quite a few, practitioners of many different walks, medical doctors and other naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners and things like that that use the products and just love them. And I use them, my kids use them and stuff like that. So it's been super, super great. So
That's cool. That's
yeah.
cool.
And I'm still, learning more about them and like, oh, maybe we try this and maybe we try that. And
Yeah.
like that. So my son had major issues with sleep, like from the time he was born, basically, which is
Mm.
part of the SIRS stuff for him. Um, and that night spray was amazing. Like once
Amazing.
I
Yeah.
started giving, and I don't give, I mean, he's 4.5. I don't give him a full dose. I give him like,
Mm.
1, 2 pumps tops kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he just sleeps so much better. Like he falls asleep. That was his
Yeah.
main issue, was that it would take him like an hour, 2 hours to like fall asleep. And then he
Mm.
would wake up in the middle of the night and then toss and turn some more for like another hour, 2 hours. It's like, you're a little kid and like you need sleep for your brain to function and
Uh-huh.
growth and all of that other stuff. And so started him on that, and that was a huge turning point for
Oh,
sure.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it
And
was.
and he probably loves it too, right? Like the flavor.
Oh yeah, he's like
He's
excited
like,
to
"Mom,
take it.
mom, give me some," right?
Yeah, and sometimes he'll be like,
Yeah.
"Can I have more?" I'm like, "No, like there's the proper amount and then there's too much. So we're gonna
Mm.
stick with, what the normal amount is." So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
we recently had a big move, and my oldest is quite young, and he was having some issues, just settling into a new place. I'm sure he has some, different genetic mutations when it comes to like, anxiety and mood, things like that as well. He's just a normal kid, but
Yeah.
he was having a hard time sleeping. And so I had kind of the same experience. And after he had it, he was like, "Oh man." I mean, he's the same. The flavor is good, and he's like, "Dad, can I have some more tonight?" I'm like, he's settled in, and we don't use that now. We haven't had to use it
Yeah.
continually, but it's some of the products are awesome too that way, where it's like we're going to use this for as long as we need to,
Period.
and you know what? You're not going to have the negative benefits because, like I said, or negative effects, not negative benefits, but because they're food based products, right? They
Yeah.
really are, and that's kind of something that we really stand on, is that these products are safe, because yeah, they're generally food extracts. So we're proud to say that.
Yeah. And it's going to work so much better with the body too if it's a food-based thing
Right.
versus
Yeah.
if it's something that's synthetic, that's made in a lab, which I mean, so many over the counter, supplements you can get GNC or just basically anywhere or even online, are a lot of synthetics. And a lot of people come to me and they're like, "Yeah, I'm taking this B complex," and they send me the label, and I'm like, this entire thing is synthetic. And it's just
Yeah.
jamming up those like your body can't actually use it, and you have these mutations, and this is just exacerbating the effects of those mutations. So we need to throw the synthetic B vitamins in the garbage and actually get on
Yep.
something real. So
Hmm.
yeah, so I think that's a big component in educating people too, is, just any supplement off the shelf is not going to do. If it says
Yeah.
folic, or if it says folic acid on it, like you don't want that. Like that's
Right.
pathetic. Like you want the folated, form, the methylated form of these nutrients so that you can actually function. So
Right.
not
Right.
all of them
And
created equal.
yeah, I think you see that with, I mean, it's fair to come to that conclusion when you think about, I think about protein as one that comes to the top of mind. I think about lots of different not only products, but just like different pathways in the body where, like, if I'm getting it from natural sources, like, like again, the protein thing, I'll go back to that. If I'm, getting animal or plant-based proteins versus the protein shake, there's I mean, plenty of research showing how much more it's absorbed, how much more bioavailable it is to the body. And I think you see that throughout different products and the way that natural products hit. If you've ever used natural caffeine versus like caffeine anhydrous, for example, I mean, if you pay attention, you feel the difference. And I think that's where I continue to believe this more and more, that, like, you know what, if we can have these sorts of products that come from food, come from plants, are, derivatives, whether they're, distilled and in an oil, or, made into a powder from there, I just think you can feel the difference for sure.
Oh yeah.
And it is important.
Hmm. I agree. I agree 100%. Awesome. Anything
So
else that you want to touch on that you think people should know about the genetic testing? I think they should know, like, first of all, it's a cheek swab. Like, they don't have to have blood
yeah,
drawn, have to,
yeah,
do anything crazy or anything like that. So it's very simple, painless kind of process, very quick and easy,
right, right.
kind of thing. So,
No, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think when people think genetics, we kind of think like you hear a lot on like the news and social media today, kind of like the scary world of what could happen with your genetics, which is valid to think that, right? There are there are companies out there who are reputable, who people have heard of that are have been known to sell some of that data. And not only that, but like the way of collecting all this stuff, it can be a problem for sure. And so for us, I mean, and I say this, Dr. Stewart, we're based out of Austin. Dr. Stewart and our the founders of our company are Texans. So I bring that up to say that when it comes to privacy and protecting the patients and giving you control over what's yours, it's a huge priority for us.
yeah.
And so how we do that, like you said, it's a cheek swab, and at no point in the process is your name connected to your genetic data, unless it's in the encrypted server where that connection's made. And so the lab never has your name. They'll never be able to identify you because of that process. And the samples are destroyed. And yeah, we have a write up, a contractual agreement with our providers and our patients that we are never going to sell this genetic data. And I think I hope that gives people peace of mind. And there's a bunch more we could talk about as far as the specifics of security and how we're doing that. But to me, it was very important. It is important, and so I'm always
Yeah.
sure to tell people, hey, this is the process. And like you said, you order the test. It's just a cheek swab. Really simple. My little boys did it, and so very simple. You put it back in, send it to the lab, and then you'll get your results and work through it with your provider, and
Mhm.
um, have the access to it that you need, and no one else having access, you don't want to have it. So that's something I think that people should know, that this is not only is it going to be so beneficial for your health, but it's going to be also very safe.
Awesome. Yes, that is always good to know. Just have that peace of
Yeah,
mind for people, for sure, for sure. So yeah, well, thank you so much for being on today and
yeah. Thanks
educating
for
all
having
of
me.
us on everything genetics and all of that good stuff. And if people want to get tested, you can just reach out and contact me. My email address is thole.erin@gmail.com. Website is erinthole.com. You can request free consultations there, all that good stuff. And then we can get you all rocking and rolling with the genetics test and kind of look under the hood and see what's going on.
Yeah,
But thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate you
yeah.
coming on
Can
to
I say one more thing? Speaking to
yeah, for
you,
sure.
your point. I just think people need to know how good of a job you do. You're a great provider. I know you've been working with us for a long time. Um, and just the kind of quality that you're going to get when you use something like this with a skilled provider, right? As far as looking at the genetics, I mean, not only is this going to be something that's accessible for your clients, which I think is great, we've tried to provide that, but I think it's also going to be something that's going to be sustainable for them, as far as understanding, hey, this is what I something I really need, and it's helping my life, and Erin's going to help me find those specific things that are going to change my life. So as important as everything else is, having a skilled provider like you is going to really make the difference. And so I just, yeah, I encourage everyone to work with you, because I think you do a great job, and I hope that we can just continue to support you in doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love the company
Yeah,
products. It's fantastic, which is why I wanted to have
awesome,
you on today. So
great.
appreciate it greatly. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, wants to get tested, anything like that, just reach out. We're here for you. Thank you so
All right.
much.